I'm Hernandez, and this is my story. Even though I'm a teacher, school wasn't easy for me growing up. Reading was very difficult. It was hard for me to pay attention to one thing at a time. I felt like I annoyed teachers because I asked a lot of questions, and it was very difficult to process information. I think it was easier to just be quiet than to open my mouth and appear dumb to my peers. So I acted out a lot, and I was actually the class clown. The biggest thing is I couldn't sit still. I needed to move. I felt very restricted sitting in a desk 8 hours throughout the day. And so I went on to college. I did well, but I worked really hard. And then it was during my master's, I took a test and my professor called me in, and I had a good relationship with her. And she was like, "Did you cheat on this test?" I was like, "No, why?" She's like, "I want you to take it again." And we were doing neurological disorders and malfunctions. And she said, "You are the furthest on the continuum for ADHD that I've ever seen." And I was like, "Really?" So I was diagnosed with ADHD at 22 years old. And she told me to be mindful because with hyperactivity comes a high probability that your rate of anxiety is going to spike. I'm like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." She's like, "No, you definitely want to be aware of triggers because this could happen." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I've been fine. I've never dealt with anxiety. I'm good." And she was right. About a year later, my brother had overdosed and my family was going through some stuff, and I had lost another family member. That's when I had my first panic attack in my mid-20s. And if you've never experienced anxiety, anxiety is like having 26 tabs open at the same time and trying to function. It's like that lag wheel going over and over. That's anxiety. And nobody realizes that some people expend tremendous energy merely to be normal. I went years without having any anxious issues until about a couple years ago when I had my first panic attack. If you've never experienced an actual panic attack, it feels like you're having a heart attack. It feels like you're dying. It's just one of those things that there's a lot of buildup, and as the problem grows and you don't address it, you shrink. And that's what struggling with anxiety is. And what a lot of people don't realize is what's closely linked with anxiety is depression. A key sign that you're struggling with depression or anxiety is you start to withdraw from friends. I had this happen to me in college when I was experiencing a lot of issues that I just didn't talk about. You start to withdraw from people, you start to lose interest in things that you usually like. And I noticed this when I stopped playing golf and basketball, and hanging with friends seemed more like a chore to me than enjoyable. When you're struggling with depression, you see the text messages and the chats more as a burden than it is something that brings you joy. The opposite of depression is not happiness. It's vitality. Vitality, the energy that you put forward to do things that you don't want to do despite the feeling that you're currently feeling. And you got to commit yourself to those small victories. The small victories of cleaning your room, the small victory of just starting an assignment, that small victory of beginning a conversation with somebody in class that you normally wouldn't. Sometimes the anxiety and the depression itself, it won't go anywhere, but you can embrace it and you can begin to control it rather than it controlling you. There's a release that you get from rearranging your room, cleaning your room, maybe getting a haircut, starting a workout routine. Your habits and your routine is super important. If you're struggling in a state of despondency, your mental health has been a struggle, your habits are going to be a lagging outcome of your results. It's super important to treat yourself like you're actually worth treating. And so this month is Get Your Green On, and we focus a lot on mental health. And I think the best way that we can combat mental health issues is to normalize the conversation. If you're becoming the person that you don't like very much, it's never too late to be the person that you're meant to be. And to do that, you have to be able to control the controllable factors. The best way to beat depression, anxiety, maybe addictive behaviors, you don't try to make somebody less anxious. You don't try to just take away the depression. What you do is you help the person become more brave. You help the person become more courageous. And in that you find balance, and in that you find clarity. Something that means a lot to me is what Carl Jung actually said. He said, the thing that we want most is to be found where we least want to look. And it's interesting because I'm an English teacher, we tell stories. And I thought about this. We don't tell kids these fairy tale stories of a hero, right? We don't tell these kids these stories about dragons just to scare them. We tell these kids these stories because we want them to know that that dragon can be beaten. And maybe your dragon is anxiety. Maybe your dragon is depression, or maybe addictive behaviors. What you need to do is you need to be able to slay that dragon in its early form before it gets too big and you get too small, and then all sorts of problems are going to exist. And so that healing, and all healing, it really begins the second that we accept ourselves for who we are and where we are in our own mess. And what I would leave you with is, don't try to get over it, go through it. So be courageous, be brave. Don't try to get over it, go through it. Start today what you're putting off for tomorrow. I'm Jordan Hernandez, and that's my story.